All right. Well, thanks a lot. Hello, everyone. Yeah, I'm Chris Pizzurro, SVP of Global Sales and Marketing at Canoe. We are an ad technology company based out of Denver, Colorado. I am honored to participate today in the Women's of Marketing Summit and really to be able to chat with Julie Yufe, GM Growth Markets for Europe at AB InBev. Julie, shall we jump right in?
Yes, thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you, Chris, for the great introduction.
Yeah. So Julie, help me out here. Growth markets, kind of a broad term, maybe. What does that mean to you?
So for AB InBev, growth markets in Europe are more than 30 countries across Europe, very varied geography, from as far north as the Nordic countries, Sweden, Finland, etc., all the way to Switzerland, Austria, Poland, Greece, Portugal. So we, as far east as you can go, as far west as you can go. But what really defines these is they are fast growth markets, both a top line and bottom line perspective. So they're growth engines. And we go to market in these countries, through mostly directly, but some also through some very strong strategic partners and relationships. And we have to approach them. Often we're a challenger in the marketplace, and we have to approach them with an innovative mindset to be able to really make a big impact, right? When we're not the leader in the market. So it's a really
kind of a strange position, right? Yeah. I would think sometimes a strange position for your company to be in, to be the challenger.
It is, but what's great is that we get to really test our creativity, our entrepreneurship, and most importantly, use this innovative thinking to really navigate, I would say, uncharted waters or complicated challenges. And to me, as a marketer, I think this is probably the #1 skill that future marketers need to have, because the world just keeps getting more complex and the challenges get bigger and bigger as you go in your career. So being able to kind of flex the muscle to be creative and stretch your thinking and innovate, I think is really the key to successful impact in the future.
Makes sense. So Julie, that's fantastic thinking. I'm sure you just didn't evolve to that this morning when you woke up, right? So we'll come back to everything, but I wanted, since this is Brand Innovators in this community, I know everyone just likes to find out, how'd you get here? So can you talk about your career path a little bit? Where did you start? How did you kind of get to this idea of flexibility and optimism you obviously have? Just take us through that a little bit.
Sure. So I'm a brand and consumer junkie. I love to understand how consumers' minds work. I love to offer them, new experiences and new products. And to be honest, I feel very privileged in my career that I've been a part of these tremendous cherished moments in consumers' lives, whether it was developing the beauty innovations that women would use on the red carpet for moments like the Emmys or the Grammys when I was at Unilever, to being able to create better choices for moms. When I worked on Lipton tea, we created, our first range of Rainforest Alliance certified teas, and Better for You RTD teas. And in coming to ABI, I've had the immense privilege of leading, moments that consumers will remember forever, like the 2018 World Cup and, seeing their team win on the pitch in Russia. So for me, the opportunity to really understand the consumer and continue to innovate for them new experiences, new products is really where, I get excited. And this has been what I've kind of brought to every single role I've had, whether it's been leading global innovations at ABI in my role as the VP of Core Brands globally, and as previously CMO of Europe and the Middle East, and now in the growth markets that we have, is how do we continue to bring new, better, more exciting innovations and experiences that thrill and delight our consumers every day.
Love it. Love it. So obviously, where we are, everyone's been impacted by COVID in one way, shape, or form. What have you had to do from the beverage industry wise? What disruption happened? Was it supply chain? Was it brands? Was it, to talk a little bit about those challenges?
The world turned upside down. What I will say is obviously every industry was impacted, and I'm based in Brussels right now, and unfortunately Europe is going through another wave where there are rising cases of COVID. And when you conduct business part of our business is conducted in bars and and hotels and restaurants and what we call the on-trade. So it's clearly this impacts us in a very, very big way, especially when there are restrictions from the government, when things are shut down, et cetera. However, that being said, the consumer trend that was present before COVID was, maintained and in fact accelerated. And some of these themes that we saw happening, whether it was the rise in e-commerce, premiumization, and trading up to more premium global brands, at-home consumption, and interest in health and wellness, these trends were there, and they really enabled us to be quite resilient during this time. I have to say the big lesson for me of COVID was, again, this innovation mindset to help us navigate the uncharted territory, right? We knew we needed to continue to offer consumers what they needed. We knew we needed to be able to take care of our consumers in our communities. And once again, we were able to create innovations in route to market, in product, in experiences that helped us weather the storm and satisfy consumer needs in unmet ways. So some examples. From the innovation side, right, we use the technology that we had been working on with de-alcoholization, right, to create non-alcoholic products to make hand sanitizer and provide, thousands and thousands of liters of hand sanitizer and disinfecting cleaner to hospitals and individuals across Europe. Likewise, we had built a platform that enabled consumers to donate to closed pubs and restaurants during the pandemic and be able to redeem for beer when the pubs reopened. So you could provide immediate cash into this industry that was really, really battered by the restrictions. These experiences, what was interesting is not just that we're able to offer them and develop them and react quickly, but that we were able to learn quickly and then deploy them across multiple global markets. In this case, a platform that was built in Europe for Save Pub Life, as we called it in the UK, was scaled to 21 global markets. And we deployed millions of dollars into the hospitality industry that otherwise was, shuttered because of government restriction. And so this really benefited communities. It really enabled us to engage consumers. The products we created, whether it was the hand sanitizer I mentioned, or innovations, like we used beer to make bread and donate to shelters across Europe, right? These were all born out of innovative thinking that we had been using to tackle other challenges. And with a slight redeploy, we're able to really accelerate the business and our relationship with consumers at this time. And then some of these, frankly, created some momentum that has stuck. So for example, consumers were unable to watch live sports because they weren't there in person. We were able to work with technology to actually put them in the heart of the action, as though they were in the seats, interacting with other people, watching the game live. That was a tremendous experience. Likewise, we have a team who works on events. And in Belgium now, you could order an entire event basically to come to your home, and we could set this event up for you when events weren't happening live, as usual. So the acceleration, I think, has precipitated by COVID has impacted our business for consumers in a very positive way. But the thing taught me is look for the opportunity in the uncharted waters. And the most impactful thing you can do is probably using this innovative mindset to try and make an impact.
I just love that the infrastructure and the skill set that you set up just to be in growth markets and be the challenger is the same mindset, and that takes it to be able to be flexible and work in such crazy circumstances like COVID. It's fantastic.
Indeed. I mean, I never would have thought at the time because it was so chaotic, but you know, it's one of those experiences that's going to stick with me forever.
Well, and if the team thinks that way, then your muscle memory is just to react that way, right?
Exactly.
And then you're there. Amazing examples of making lemonade from lemon in a few of those situations. What caught my ear is that when you said, and you kind of breezed over, but you're like, oh, we went from, took it in one market and then scaled it to 22. That doesn't just happen. So what were some of the nuances of, was London or Belgium different than what you had to do in New York or Mexico City or something? Like that just doesn't happen. There must be nuances in logistics there.
So I've been fortunate. I didn't go into detail on this about my career, but I've had a lot of roles where I've been on the global team, or I've been on the local team or the regional team, and across categories. I mean, I've marketed to teenage boys, menopausal women, in developed markets, in developing markets,
different products, right? Those were different
products,
okay.
different countries, different languages, different targets. But the thing that's most interesting, so I've been on both sides, right? I've been the agency, client, and then built an internal agency team for our, all intents and purposes. I've been on the receiving end of the global work. I've been also on the team who was trying to make a one-size-fits-all for the world. So what I've picked up from these experiences is that ultimately, I believe consumers have more in common than have differences. And especially as you go through your career, being able to understand the things that unite and the experiences that are common, as well as those distinctions, actually can help you sharpen yourself, be a better marketer, and also drive innovation and growth on whatever you're working on. So you can make these connections across markets. For example, the process we used when we were trying to scale solutions during the initial days of COVID was not dissimilar to a process that I used in 2018 on the World Cup, because I was leading core brands who were all trying to activate World Cup in different countries, different teams, different brand identities, et cetera, right? And there were some universal things that worked everywhere that we could learn via, connecting the right dots and bringing the right pieces together. In the case of the platform that I was mentioning earlier, we built a platform, and because, we had a team in place internally who was building this skill set already, we were able to then quickly see, okay, it's working here. What tweaks and small things could we make, to see how it could be applicable everywhere? That's a different approach than saying, okay, I need to build this for Sweden. And what is the ideal solution for Norway, right? This was a rapid test and learn and innovate process, but I think it allowed us to have tremendous impact and also find the light at the end of the tunnel, if you will.
Got it. Something you said there, I found very interesting. I think a lot of times when people think about innovation and, a word like that, it always has to be completely new, never ever thought about it before. And you gave a couple examples of, well, we dusted that plan off that was successful in 2018. So but I think that's key, because innovation does not necessarily have to be new every time, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it has to, it's always radical, like I've invented a better wheel, right? Or a better mousetrap. That being said, right, yes, we learned a lot, right? And we learn a lot from the good and the bad. So like with this approach where we were sharing ideas across markets during COVID and during World Cup time, we also shared as we were building new businesses within Europe. So for example, we learned from the experiences of diverse markets like the US, Mexico, Brazil, when building our internal Draftline agency team, both from the good and from the bad. Sure, we were the first one that was a multilingual studio because Europe has so many languages and such a diverse portfolio of countries, et cetera. But there was a lot we could take from countries that were operating in one language or that had been doing some things particularly well, had built some skills that were particularly strong. Similarly, when it comes to activating our brands, one of the things I'm proudest of is taking this mindset of, we know we've learned some things that have worked in the past and kind of reapplying to a new problem for activating Budweiser and the England 2019 senior women's football team. So that's, women's soccer. We had long been a sponsor of men's soccer and Premier League in the UK. And here we had this opportunity to support the women's sport, which was not typically done by beer brands, as well as bring one of our brands that had not typically done this before to try and drive some impact. And we were able to create a tremendous program. Some of the ideas were wholly new, right? We kind of created content based off of inspiring words from Queen Elizabeth I that the consumer knew, and used them to rally the nation in support of the women's team. And then some of them were principles that had just never been applied before. We were the first to put the women's athletes on the packaging. We were the first to support the team in a way that would be more common in men's sport, but isn't often the case in women's sport. And so we brought a lot of attention, we brought a lot of energy behind the team, obviously behind the brand, opening up the aperture of the brand to new consumers. But the most important part was we were able to bring the community together in a way that hadn't before and change the impact on the sport. And so again, this was a combination of the wholly new and then the smart connecting of the dots, if you will.
Right. No, it's an important combination. You mentioned the word "we" so many times when you're talking about your team, and we activated this and we activated that. How do you evaluate your staff in the first place, and then how do you work to have them be able to further their careers and evolve? So what things do you look in the first place, and then how are you continually looking to evolve the folks who execute on your behalf?
This is such a good question. So I think the first thing to say is I'm a big believer in all of the research that we've seen, that the more diverse the team, the better able you are to tackle the complicated challenges, the uncharted territories, right? Everything we've just been saying. I think the combination of the unique ways of thinking and the complementary ways of thinking really makes a difference, particularly when you're in a crisis or a challenge, or you're not just performing what you already do well, but you're trying to go somewhere you've never been before, which is, fortunately or unfortunately, the new norm, right? That said, for me, what I like to look for is people who complement one another from the skill set perspective, from a point of view. I work with a very diverse team. They're sitting in countries all over Europe. They have completely different backgrounds and skill sets. Some grew up in finance, some grew up in consumer insight, some grew up in sales, some grew up, I have people on the team who were in the military, who worked on nonprofits, everything in between. Supply chain people, experts in logistics. It's a very, very broad group of people. And I like to bring the different vantage points. And I also like to complement what I don't know, because the reality is there's more that I don't know than I know. So that's what I look for in the team, particularly as the challenges mount. And I think as long as you have, you might have different points of view, but you have 100% commitment to tackle the problem, that's going to be a winning team.
Wholeheartedly agree. It seems like I would love to work for you in terms of as it just seems like you're a natural mentor leader just by your approach. So is there again, kind of going back in your career, just really just came to me is there any mentors that you had, or people that you looked up to, or even relationships that you've now had in the industry for 30 years. I'm at a conference here in LA right now myself, and you're like, I don't even remember where I met you in the first place, but you're an amazing person and I've learned so much from you. So anything just around the other relationships in the industry over the years?
Absolutely. There are people I admire, I've worked with, who I've admired for a very, very long time. And, I tremendously respect their trajectory, but more importantly, the way they led. And I look to that. The lesson I took away from these mentors is be the person that you want to be. Act the way that you can go home at the end of the day and know, okay, I acted with integrity, was a good person. I think that for me is very, very important. And that's the leaders that I hold in highest regard are the ones who do that time after time after time, while also delivering tremendous performance, right? They didn't change themselves to be able to deliver. In fact, they delivered because of themselves. I think that's a very important lesson learned. But the other thing that I think is really, really key, and it goes back to this point about diverse teams, is there's so much I learn from my team every single day, because they have information, experiences, perspective that I don't have. And that I think it's incredibly important to make sure that you're learning and growing, like that one is learning and growing every day, not just from above, but from all directions. And those are the people who hold me accountable for, again, being the good person, for making sure that I'm really, pushing my very best and holding my weight in the team, and for making sure that we maximize the creative opportunity that we have when our brains all come together. So we've taken a little bit of a sidetrack, but
no, it's all good. We got time. It's all good. When you were saying that too, it did make me think of answering my own question. I was like, there's some leaders that I looked at and I said, I don't want to be like them. Like sometimes just being exposed to the ones that you looked up to and you're like, I want to be just like them. There's been some others where I'm like, yeah, actually that guy, that's not what I want to do. So I actually like this on the previous panel. I thought this was a good question. I'm going to throw it out to you. I won't ask you what your favorite brands are within your own company. I don't want to cause any issues or anything. But other brands that you look out in an execution, you're like, oh man, I wish I did that one. That was fantastic. Or just brands that you admire.
Oh, I mean, as I said from the beginning, I'm a brand junkie. So I probably have, a brand.
All right, then what are your top 2 or 3? You don't have to go on all day.
There's so many. I'm just trying to think of which one.
I don't want to put you on the spot.
I think no. What I would say is I've been super impressed, I would say, recently by, well, of course, oh my goodness, I feel like I should be stumped on this question. There's so many good answers. I love the work that Burger King has done in recent years. I think they've been remarkably consistent despite being able to constantly innovate. Right? No matter what the activity is, I just think it's, every single time, right? It is 3 key messages, it's only those messages, but the way it's delivered is there's tremendous breadth in the way they deliver those messages. Some of my all-time favorite work, if it's even can be called a brand, I think was California Milk Board, right? So if you remember back in the day, all those Got Milk, campaigns, I mean, talk about, branding an unbranded or a commodity, right? If you can call it that. I think that it made something that was never top of mind, and that lasted for, I don't even know how long. Back into my indulgence world, I absolutely love the way that I think it was over the last year actually that McDonald's kind of reinforced its classic status, this whole notion of like everyone has their order, and has continued to reinvent and come up with new ways to approach that. I have lots of favorites, but those are some of my favorites.
All right, I think we're going to do another. I think we might have hit on something here. I think we could have a whole show on this.
Probably.
Julie's favorite brands. So what's the future for the beverage industry? I mean, some things like I don't know, you guys may have known, but who knew, this was going to be the next big thing, or, where waters and then flavored waters and all that. Where do you see the industry moving? Is it because of COVID? You mentioned there's stickiness around health. Where in general, where do you think the next trends or pivots are going?
I think there's still a lot of traction in the three that I mentioned earlier. So again, premiumization, the strong growth of global brands, because again, this is an industry that, for the most part is very, very local, and there's nothing wrong with local, but we still see, always the tension between the local and the global trends. And I think health and wellness, making positive choices. We've seen the rise of products that really tap into that, both functionally and emotionally for consumers. And especially, as COVID has given people time to pause and reflect on their choices, we're seeing that in a big way. And again, I think there's a huge, we know there's a tremendous runway of growth in e-commerce and direct-to-consumer businesses. And this is really accelerating the way in which we interact and sell to consumers. If you think about the entire environment about watching sport, and watching sports, consuming beer, it's a natural activity. It happens. It's a prime consumption moment, and that whole system, right, has been changing and morphing, not in a bad way, but to more readily serve the consumer, faster, with more precision, with more choice, simply because of what's happened in the last few years. And I think that's great, because I think the consumer wins. And when we're looking to find ways to win with the consumer, that's where the innovation lies, that's where the creativity is, and that's where people win. And again, I go back to my previous point, right? The world is becoming more and more complex. The shopping behavior is more and more complex. The choices are multiplying. That's good for consumers. That's really, really good for consumers. So as marketers try to navigate this space, we need to make sure that we are building teams who are best able to tackle these creative challenges. And the reason I call them creative challenges is because there isn't a script. Just like with COVID, there's no script on how to win. So to me, being able to make connections across markets, to make connections across industries, to be able to weave in insights that can be deployed at a store level, irrespective of where the insight came from, right, is very important. And that, I think, being able to flex that muscle now and throughout your career will give marketers an edge, but they need to be able to take those opportunities.
Nope, makes complete sense. All right, we're starting to come to the end of our time. I want to go back to a younger Julie, just starting off in the industry. The classic question: what advice would you give your younger self advice? One or 2 points of anything maybe you would have done differently or done quicker. No.
I would say, and I kind of sound like a broken record, but it really looms large with me. They take every opportunity to embrace complicated challenges, especially when you don't know how you're going to tackle them, because it will force you to train yourself to innovate. It will force you out of your comfort zone. And this is and when you come through managing or navigating of the complicated problem, this is going to be the skill that you rely on time after time to improve your creativity, to improve your impact, and to lead marketers of the future.
I think that's wonderful advice.
What advice would you give?
Be flexible. I think when you're an optimist, when you're taking chances, certainly in my 20s, this is exactly the way it should be done, and which is wonderful in one aspect, right? That you're a leader and you can do these things. But you need to listen to other folks. You need to be flexible. I love what you said about your team and having diverse opinions, diverse people. I think of Abraham Lincoln and the team of rivals, and he hired his whole staff of different people who were against him. And he said, I had a stronger team because of it. So yeah, definitely resonate. All right, Julie, any last minute thoughts? I know we're coming up on time, but we could certainly just keep scatting here, but if you're good.
No, I mean, I appreciate the time. I appreciate the questions. I definitely think, we could talk all day about innovations. And again, I have more in my list of brands, but I would say embrace the challenge and, use your innovative mindset to embrace that and stand yourself in good stead for the future.
Fantastic. Julie, it's really been a pleasure talking with you. Hope everyone has a great rest of session. Again, thrilled to be here in Women in Marketing, and we'll turn it back over.